Well, you know, it's been a hell of a weekend when you wake up from it and it's Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely. It's, man, I don't even know what day of the week it is half the time anymore. So thanks for telling me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, it's been just a crazy few days. Me coming down to Hobart to do a few things with Project RAWcast and also a Canon Instameet or a Leap meet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I felt like I'd just seen you a few hours ago and now we're talking and you're over there and I'm here.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago. We were sitting on the couch recording a broadcast talking about filters. Now I'm back in Melbourne, back home, and yeah, talking to you via the internets.
Yes, well, it was a pretty full-on week. We've definitely had a pretty crazy week. Not much sleep. A few sunrise shoots. We had the ink tutor come down to Hobart as well. Canon, all sorts of things. But before we have a talk about that, let's quickly mention our George's Camera competition. So we $50 gift voucher on offer from George's Cameras. Now, obviously, this is running all year, but our first one is this month. So we'll be drawing that next Wednesday, the 1st of February. So just keep all the images rolling in on the Project RAWcast hashtag and clearly mentioning us within the post as well. We'll pick the best image from that next Wednesday, the 1st of February.
Also like to thank Nissi Filters as well for their ongoing support of Project RAWcast and offering our listeners a coupon code to be used at nissifilters.com.au for any purchase. You can use a coupon code Project RAWcast to get 5% off any purchase online.
Awesome. Thanks to both George's Cameras and Nissi Filters for the support of the podcast. We couldn't do it without you guys. So now, mate, we had a few early mornings there on the weekend, and both yourself and Bo had some issues up Mount Wellington with -5 degree temperatures.
Yeah, I think yeah, we weren't really expecting it to be that cold. I think it was the wind that really did it, and both Bo and I were struggling to keep our hands warm and had our hands up in under our armpits trying to get some feeling back into them at a couple of points, but it was quite an awesome view from up there, and it was really fun.
I thought you were both going to burst out into tears at one stage there.
We're harder than that. We're mainlanders.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely should remember to put the jackets in the car next time. It was the thought that counts. I did pull the jackets out for you both to use, but got a little bit distracted by the early morning start to get into the car. Yeah,
it was 5 a.m. I think you picked up both jackets. I can vouch for you doing that, but then something else distracted you. You put them down, picked something else up, and then we're in the car and didn't notice that we didn't have them until we're at the top of the mountain, which is kind of useless.
Pretty sure it was my shoes that distracted me. So I was just thinking about myself, really selfish.
Probably better to forget the jackets and remember to put your shoes on than the other way around. Get to the top of the mountain and realize, I'm barefoot.
Yes. Look, so Saturday afternoon we had a Canon Instameet for the Leap program or Leap incentive. So Take the Leap here at Mona Museum in Hobart. We had a massive turnout, so Bo and I hosted, and obviously you've come down to attend it and take part, and so let's have a bit of a chat about that. From a host point of view, it was an incredible event. Like I had an amazing time doing it, and really kind of helping to hopefully inspire a few people to do something a little bit different for their photography. We had some fantastic landscape photographers and even some street photographers, some commercial portrait photographers turn up to it. So we really got to challenge them to step outside of their boundary with some challenges based around some creative ideas, which we had a time limit on, a couple of different locations, and some of the images that came out are pretty awesome. The best thing for me of what I saw with the group of people is the teamwork that happened within them. Really cool to see the community come together, and guys who've never met each other, guys who probably maybe sometimes engage with each other online. There was a group there that did know each other, but there were also some that really have either never met the others or whatever. And it was just awesome to see so many people come together for the same purpose, which is for photography, and to create some really cool images.
Yeah, I think Project RAWcast had a good representation of just how to experience that Canon Leap meet as well. You being a host and sort of knowing how and where everything was going to happen, and also knowing a lot of the people there because it was down in Hobart. And then there was my side of it where I didn't really know any people there besides you and Bo. and a couple of other people from Hobart, but and also not knowing what the challenges and locations were going to be, and just being at Mona for the MoFo Festival as well it's a crazy place and lots of interesting people and sights and sounds and tastes there as well. So it was a really cool experience and very challenging to go through those different sets of challenges and try and get out of our comfort zone with photography. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's like some of the images that have come across on the Mofo Leap Meet hashtag are really cool. It's great to see some guys try some new things. It's been really, really cool to see. And we had one of the attendees, Lauren Cooper, kindly donate her backflip abilities on the trampoline to defy gravity, which is one of the challenges, which was really cool. We had so many awesome people just really having a smile on their face at the end of the day after doing something a little cool. I think obviously people didn't know what to expect with it, which is also a really good thing. I think, to turn up with your camera and just go and take some photos is a great thing. And I think the whole incentive behind the LEAP program is extremely cool with Canon, and I'm very, very happy to be part of it and hopefully to be part of it some more in the future as well. So
yeah, it's one thing that we've probably touched on quite a few times in this podcast is going out and challenging yourself and to really drive your development as a photographer. And that's what the Canon Leap Meets do, is they get people to go to somewhere they may not have been before, or even somewhere they're familiar with, and do something that they wouldn't normally do and really stick to a specific concept or theme and challenge themselves to take photos that's just completely outside of their genre, or even in their own genre, but just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, I know what it's like myself to get stuck in a rut of creativity. Or you don't even realise that you are stuck in that rut. I think you just pick up your camera and just do the same thing over and over and over again. And I think in the age of social media, it's kind of also caused a little bit of, how we say, stress or maybe negativity towards your own creative process. We maybe might just touch on my ideas of that a little bit later, but this program is really, really quite cool. And another thing that we were lucky to be part of was the Stephen DuPont show on the weekend, which is part of Mona as well.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect from this. I didn't look up what it was really going to be about. I was just happy to head along and see a good show at Mona and MoFo, and just seeing Stephen DuPont do his kind of theatrical performance based on his own photography and tell a story, and also share a view of the world that many of us kind of luckily don't get to or don't have to see, was just, yeah, as you said, emotionally challenging. And I wrote something on my latest post on Instagram as well about my views on what I thought from after seeing the show.
And look, I think if anybody doesn't even know who Stephen DuPont is, he's one of the world's leading war and disaster photographers. He's kind of carved out that niche himself, and works for publications like Times and The New Yorker. This particular show is called Don't Look Away, and it's all about his photography and kind of the emotions that he's feeling when he's gone through these events. And I think it really does put a bit of a spotlight on how easy many of us do have it for our creative art, as compared to somebody like this who literally puts his life on the line to go out and produce the imagery that he does. And you've, as you say, you've put some stuff up on your feed this morning, which is your personal opinion of this, and I'm very much in agreement with you as well. It's
kind of a shame as well that this kind of stuff doesn't really get to mainstream media, because the images that he's taken are very visually confronting from some of the horrific things that have happened around the world. And it's clearly by his show as well, and the things he was saying, it's taken a toll on his mental state and his view on humanity. I guess the rest of us in the world don't really want to see that, even though we might turn a blind eye to it or have some vague idea of what's going on in the world. But yeah, it was good to be able to actually see what is going on and see someone's point of view from being right there in the thick of it, and also having their own life nearly ended a couple of times, and yeah, still getting back up and performing their craft of taking photos and showing it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you're right in the midst of a suicide bombing and you can still pick up your camera and do your job, and I mean literally to the point where he is covered in blood himself and doesn't even know if he's injured from because he's still in the state of shock. I think that's somebody who needs to be respected and truly is. I mean, he's a Canon master as well, one of the highest accolades you can get from Canon within their company, and it's pretty incredible to just see the imagery that he produces and to see how photography and storytelling through photography can really show events and the history of the world. We, as landscape photographers, we're always looking for the positive things, great light, amazing scenes, all this type of thing, but obviously there's so much more to photography, and there's so many different ways that people like to portray their images, and this side of photography is something that's really eye-opening to see, and I highly recommend even just having a look, looking up Stephen Dupont. We'll put some links to his social media accounts and his website within our episode notes. It's pretty eye-opening to think about what some people do for their art and what he's put himself through emotionally, and it really kind of showed within this performance. And as you said before, you didn't know what to expect. I certainly didn't know what to expect, and I at one stage I literally had tears in my eyes when I was looking at some of those images, because it was so confronting, kind of seeing how close he was literally to death, to some of the worst human disasters, and we're not talking just natural disasters, we're talking wartime disasters that we've faced in our lifetime. So,
and it was a good show of how photography can make a difference in the world. One example that he had of some soldiers in Afghanistan desecrating a couple of dead bodies of Taliban soldiers, and even that getting out into the world and sort of rethinking what was actually going on during wars from both sides, and how you can kind of have respect for humanity even if you are on opposing sides of a war.
Yeah, for sure. And some of the things like the hurricanes and tidal waves and things that he did as well, which is obviously natural disasters, and the way he explained, how can nature do this to people, but at the same time, it also kind of portrayed human triumph as well, where humans and humanity came together to really support each other and help each other through those testing times. And something we've discussed previously as well about photos, and some of the most iconic photos ever are the ones that portray human suffering. Now, it's just the way it is. And when I saw these images, when I saw these photos, I'm just blown away by how moving they are. It was pretty tough to look at, some of them, but it was also incredibly hard to look away once they were up on the big screen that we were looking at as well.
I guess, yeah, we kind of left thinking, well, our photography is just nice and easy, isn't it? We don't have to really worry about risking our lives and going out and taking pretty pictures of landscapes. But I guess we're sort of showing that everything's fine, everything's nice in the world, and it takes something bad like that, those experiences, to actually make people think that things need to change.
Yeah, I'll definitely put into context what we did straight after this performance, when we walked to the car and drove up Mount Wellington, and there were no clouds in the sky, and we were a little bit upset about that.
Yeah, our struggles with photography, no clouds.
Yeah, it definitely put our struggles into context for sure as landscape photographers, and it's something that I highly recommend any photographers to go and have a look at some of Stephen Dupont's work. It's pretty interesting to see that side of photography and that side of storytelling as well.
Sometimes photojournalistic or wartime photography side of things can seem a bit glamorous as well, when you see that they're out in these action zones taking photos, making a difference for journalism and photography. But this show and the things that Stephen Dupont has been through kind of takes you away from that and think maybe it's not such a glamorous profession to be in, because you are seeing just horrible sides of humanity, and we don't really get to see those photos shown to us because they are very confronting, and no one wants to turn on the TV and see photos like that. They don't want to open the newspaper and see photos like that because they're happy in their lives.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as we say, it definitely puts into context how easy we have it in our chosen genre of photography. Look, I have a personal massive thank you to the team at Canon for everything that happened over the weekend, from the Instameet through to the invitations to that particular performance. It was an incredible experience and something really eye-opening in many ways to photography, just seeing how photography can bring people together, seeing how photography can be fun, seeing how creativity through photography can really help improve people and drive people to want to succeed something. And at the same time, that show was really eye-opening and in many ways confronting, but hugely positive in terms of what I experienced seeing that as well. So a personal massive thank you for Canon to allowing us to be part of that. And I'm very, very much looking forward to working with them some more in the future and continuing on my personal photography journey. So.
What else happened after that weekend, or after the Canon Instameet? We had in the back of our minds that we'd be doing a live broadcast for Project RAWcast.
Yeah, look, we kind of had a bit of a chat just over a week ago and came up with a bit of an idea about hopefully doing something a little different to things that we've seen and maybe just taking Project RAWcast a little bit too literally as well here by doing a live broadcast and a live workshop effectively on the use of neutral density filters. We were both very, very nervous doing this. I think a lot of our lack of sleep was over the weekend was actually based around knowing that we were going to do this. The planning that we put into it was pretty full on over the week and how to make it work, all the tests. But using Facebook Live, if anybody didn't see us or didn't take part in this or hasn't seen since, we used Facebook Live, which is a live video feed to effectively have an online discussion around the topic of filters or neutral density filters and how to use them, some example shots, how to clean them, when to use them, what the different types are, all of those sort of things. And for us, it was amazing to have such a great audience take part in the live discussion and also just really be part of something that we hope we can do more in the future as well.
Yeah, it was. I remember saying to you before when we were talking about how many people might actually come along to watch, and I thought, maybe we'll be lucky to get 10 people to come along, but we definitely got a few more than that and just started having comments roll through as we were showing the filters, saying how we use them, how what they're made of, and just giving an in-depth overview of neutral density filters and grad filters. But there was one thing I was very happy with, and that's that we got a chance to make some mugs.
Yeah, yep. Two mugs using mugs. Yes. I think that was the only reason you actually wanted to come down, wasn't it? So that we could get some mugs made with Project RAWcast printed on them. So
yeah, I was definitely getting distracted during the broadcast. So I was just having a look at the beautiful mugs that we had sitting there. But yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, we actually found it hard to keep up with the comments that were rolling in across the live feed.
Yeah, they were just dropping out of our little list of comments, and they kept scrolling past. So we're trying to keep on top of them as much as we could. But yeah, there was so many from some great people watching it that we just couldn't keep up.
Yeah, we could only see 4 comments at a time on the particular feed that we were looking at. So a few rolled through, and what was quite exciting for us was seeing who took part in the conversation as well. Some incredible photographers who came in, took time off for whatever they were doing, took part in the conversation and constructive part of the conversation as well. Some people who obviously had spoken to me previously about, can I do something around filters? And I think that's part of how this idea came about is how can we do something that do it differently rather than just doing a blog post that you can read and maybe not take so much from, but actually interact and engage with us and ask us questions around the things that we were talking about. And incredible experience for us, and I definitely want to do this again in the future sometime and try to focus on some more topics that are very helpful for the community as well.
Yeah, so if any of our listeners out there have ideas on what they'd like us to talk about during a live tutorial, then get in touch with us at Project RAWcast and we'll try and put something together so everyone can benefit from learning from the whole community as well. So it's not, you don't just learn from us, you'll learn from other people dropping in and just leaving comments, asking questions. And it was good to see some of the questions come through. When I was reading them and listening to the questions, it was, it made me think as well, like, yeah, that's a great question. What would you do in that situation, or how does that affect your photography? So yeah, I was really happy to see everyone joining in and taking part.
Yeah, and like filters, or the use of filters, is the single biggest request that I have for advice on any of my social media channels. People just want to know how to use them, and there's a lot of confusion around what they are, and obviously people sometimes confuse digital filters with actual physical filters. So it's one of those things too for me that when I was trying to learn, I didn't know where to go for advice. I could look online, but the topics that I was looking online a few years ago weren't really that informative. I didn't really know anybody in the local community who used them, so I didn't know where to go for advice. So when I was starting to use them, it was a lot of trial and error for me. It really literally took me to take just thousands of photos with them to figure out how to use them. Even simple things like calculating a stop of light. How do you do that? Because there's so many different ways you can do that with your camera. There's 3 basic settings that can effectively determine that. The exposure triangle we're talking about. So with, which setting do you change when you're calculating a stop of light? Those types of things are the things that if I would have known that from the very beginning when I was using filters, I would have found it so much easier, and I probably would have started creating great images a long, long time ago as compared to when I did actually start to really improve with my photography.
And I think one thing, if you are just getting into filters and you do have a couple that you've found that you want to get and you've ended up getting and you're trying them, you probably will take shots that aren't really all that great to start with. It does take time, like anything in photography, just trial and error, lots of time, lots of different situations to build up knowledge and learn how to use them a bit better. But if you watch the tutorial, hopefully it'll speed that process up a bit. We do have a chart on our Facebook page that you can check out to see what calculations you need to make to change your shutter speed when putting on different ND filters. And it's a chart I'm very proud of, and I think I've got about 6 million layers in Photoshop to put that together. Every little element is a new layer, but it worked. It came together. I was quite proud of it.
Only 6 million. Mate, I was watching you thinking to myself, how can something so simple turn into something so complex? Like, you're pretty good with Photoshop, but I think even you started to confuse yourself a little bit. It was a good little chart, and I'm it's great to do it, but I think maybe next time just make it a little bit easier. What we'll probably do with this one as well is we'll link it from the episode notes here as well, so you'll be able to download it directly from our website, not just on Facebook. But yeah, look, basically what it is the top line is your base exposure, but the lines below that, 6 stop, 10 stop, and 15 stop. So whatever the base exposure without a filter on at the top correlates to the following exposure times by using any of those other filters. So yeah, we'll put a link up to that, and feel free to use it and distribute it however you see fit. If you watched our Instagram stories over the past couple of days, you probably see the complexity that went into creating that. Even still for me, I don't know how you can start doing luminosity masking on a line graph. I don't know. I think you've gone out of your way to just be complicated. It
was just a lot of copy and pasting of different layers, and it turned out to work. And then I put them in groups so they were all nice and neat, and I can move them all around together as needed. And yeah, I'll put up a small Photoshop document that people could get. I don't know. I'll look into it. I'll see whether it's feasible or not.
Yeah. So yeah, the whole video is available on our Facebook page. So at facebook.com/Project RAWcast,
and our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, and on our YouTube channel. So if you're watching the Facebook version, fast forward to the 5-minute mark. That's where we started. We kind of just wanted the audience to build up a little bit in the first 5 minutes. But yeah, we really just touched on pretty much anything filter related, and gave some examples of shots that were literally raw conversions with no editing. using each different type of filter, some example shots of our own that we've used for different types of filters, and just really answered questions that kind of came in from the audience. And it was really good to see the audience engaging with each other as well. And it's definitely something that we'll be looking to do sometime in future. We've had suggestions of maybe doing a live audience version. I don't know. That might be a little bit tough.
Yeah, it might make us even more nervous. I mean, it's one thing for us to just be, as we are now, staring at a computer screen talking to each other, but maybe a bit more nervous when we've got cameras on us, and then even more nervous if we've got people watching us live there.
Project RAWcast, the Broadway edition.
Yes, Project RAWcast, a musical. It's going to happen.
A musical.
Now casting.
Yes, I don't think you want to hear me singing. So somebody else will have to play Tassie Grammar, but if I can choose one, it'll probably be Matt Damon that I'll choose to play Tassie Grammar. So who would you choose to play you in the Project RAWcast the musical?
Maybe Hugh Jackman. He's got some Broadway experience there.
Yeah, actually, that's good.
That's fitting. Yeah,
Damon Jackson and Damon.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon and Hugh Jackman. I've mixed them
Damon
together
Jackman,
somehow.
yeah.
Somehow they've became
merged into one Project RAWcast.
Yes. So just keep an eye out for that. We'll try to sell the rights to that Broadway show. Look, and so thank you again to everybody who took part in that, and we're hoping to do another one sometime within the next 6 weeks. We just got to figure out topics and maybe even do a version in the field. We'll see how we go. We'll have to just work out the technical details of how to actually do that live with cameras and so forth. So
you might have to come to Melbourne this time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing that actually. Well, don't tell anybody that I'm coming though, because I'll probably end up spending time with about 30 people again. But so we'll just keep that between ourselves that I'm coming over to Melbourne, all right?
Oh, there you go. Just have everyone come as a live studio audience. Then you don't need to see 30 individual people. You can see them all at once.
It's a secret.
Yep. All right. Yes, all our listeners, don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody. We've read yesterday that the Australian Photography Magazine Photographer of the Year for 2016 has been announced.
Yeah, the winner's gone to Helen Whittle for a series of black and white portraits of her daughter, and they're just some amazing photos there.
They are very, very, very cool photos. Very, very moody. There's a lot of character. And when I look at these photos and I look at her daughter's faces, she's really brought out the character in her face. Like it, just the hair, like everything about it. Very impressed with those images. I'd love to be able to shoot some portraits like that.
One thing about this competition, just as a whole as well, it's open to amateur photographers, but it kind of shows that line where amateur and professional photographer, it doesn't really matter what category you fall into, the actual quality of photos is like there's no real line between amateur and professional. The quality can still be just top notch no matter what you are.
Yeah, there's a lot of fantastic amateur photographers out there who either don't want to or just haven't been able to turn photography into a living. Doesn't matter whether you class yourself as a professional or an amateur. There's no differentiation between the skill set of using a camera. So there's some incredible images here, and one so the 2016 Landscape Photographer of the Year, Andy Smith, some pretty awesome images there too. Very distinctive long exposure shots. They're some pretty sweet images.
Yeah, some seascapes, and I think one from Milford Sound there as well. I've got some great drone shots from Todd Kennedy for the Travel Photographer of the Year. Some dunes and trees and Cable Beach as well with the camels there.
Yep, that may be one of my favourite winners out of this group. I might be a little bit biased, but that's pretty. There's some great images there. I just love the compositions of the shots there, and definitely the Broome Camel Beach shot is quite distinctive. It's pretty easy to tell where that one comes from.
Just notice the figure eight pools there as well. Not used to seeing them from the air, but I can make them out there now. Yeah,
the one, the Nature Photographer of the Year, Neil Vincent. So some amazing shots here of a whale. Just incredible. The detail. I mean, obviously shooting underwater is a skill set of its own, but to be in that situation and to be there at that moment of being able to capture these particular shots is pretty awesome and pretty phenomenal achievement, I think, as well.
And Giannis Iosaris as well for the Black and White Photographer of the Year. I do like these because they're from my hometown of Melbourne. Some wonderful black and white street photography there.
Yep, and the 2016 Junior Photographer of the Year, so Shania Rose Humphreys. There's so much energy and action in these shots, the rodeo shots, or they are just awesome. I really like the close-up shot, the one where it's zoomed in on the feet of the horse. Some really, really, really great shots there, great action shots. Somebody's got a very good future ahead of them, I think, to be able to take shots like that. And the 2016 Photo of the Year, so Tim Baskerville, a guy doing a kind of a cartwheel flip, which is
it's just sort of waiting for him to keep moving or just seeing how he's hovering there. But yeah, it's perfectly timed, just the shape and motion there, and the other two onlookers as well, looking back to keep the focus just directly on that guy doing the flip there.
Do you think he landed on his feet?
I don't think it matters if you get the photo.
I'm just wondering if the guy's actually doing the cartwheel landed on his feet or not. Because that's a pretty cool shot, great action shot, nice and sharp, great use of shutter speed and everything else. And obviously it's a black and white image as well. So there's a good representation of black and white and monochrome images through here, from the Portrait Photographer of the Year through to the Black and White Photographer of the Year, and also the Photo of the Year, which is good to see. I wonder if they're digital or film. I don't know. I don't know the story behind these images, whether they've been, how they've been processed or developed. But however they're done, they're pretty awesome images, pretty phenomenal quality.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to having a lot of color in our landscape shots, but it still doesn't take away the ability to appreciate some really beautiful black and white images as well.
Yep. I've got a question. So I'm not too philosophical normally. You know me. I'm pretty logical and pretty straight down the line in the way that I see and say things. So, but over the weekend, after all of the stuff that happened, everything, I kind of came up with this theory in my head around photography and social media. I've been thinking about this for a while. I just haven't known how to voice it. And it's that our use of social media and our use of the way that or the images that we post to social media, and the expectation and the belief that people will only engage with a certain type of image is destroying the creativity around photography. It's really hampering and harming the creative process, which photography is. I mean, it's a creative art. I was relating this to myself and thinking, how long has it been since I've really stepped outside the zone of landscape photography? I've really focused on that. I used to do a lot of food photography, macro photography. I used to really experiment and play, just use my camera as much as I possibly could. But because of the way my social media feeds are shaped, and because of the expectation of what my audience expect from me, I haven't gone down that path. I haven't really focused on that. And there's almost, I'm feeling that maybe this might be a larger scale issue within the photography community, that the creative process is really being harmed by social media and the expectation that people want to see, or the belief that people want to see a very specific style of image from photographers.
Well, it's good to see that you've started thinking. That's always a good sign.
I know. My brain hurts. I gave myself a headache thinking of this one. So
I think I've slowly been making your brain hurt little bits over time, so you can get used to it, and now you can work through the pain and keep having some good thoughts.
Yeah,
but, I do agree with you. I think that social media can have that effect where you do get stuck in a thing where you only post photos that will get a good response. I know I've got a friend who posts some amazing landscape shots from, he's posted some from Greenland and Antarctica, and then they don't get as much response as when he just puts up a photo of a nice sunset. And it can be a bit frustrating when you are trying to get your images out there and it's the wrong ones, or not the ones that you want, that are getting the best response. So you might get stuck into the habit of just posting the ones that people like. And it can be very detrimental on an individual basis for your own creativity. And I know I spoke with some people at the Canon Leap meet as well about when you realize that you are just shooting for social media or Instagram. If you find yourself doing that when you're out and you're thinking, how is it going to look on Instagram? Then you need to take a step back from the social media side of things and just look at photography in the real world and go out and do something that looks good to you and something you can be happy with, not what everyone else is going to be happy with.
Yeah, look, so one of the images that I posted over the weekend is a portrait image of Bo, or the ink shooter. Now, I'm very happy with this image. I look at it even still right now today, after a few days after I posted it and took it. I'm very happy with it. It for me kind of represents, experimentation, creativity, all of that sort of thing. And I discussed earlier this year, and I think it was one of the episodes that we posted this year, that I would love to go out and experiment with portrait photography and lighting this year. So this was kind of the start of that, or the basis of that as well, is I really wanted to post something that's really outside of my comfort zone. One of the comments that got left on this particular post, and it's still there. Now, I was talking about how we should, as photographers, be creative and not be scared to share work that you think people might not like. So the comment is, I do agree, but on IG, it's also hard because if you share things out of your theme, people will stop following and less likes make the reach bad. It's a shame, but I do appreciate the effort. So when I had a bit of think about that comment and my response to this particular comment, and again, like, I really genuinely appreciate the comment, and fantastic guy that I engage with quite a lot. My response is, if people are not connecting with you as a person, is it really that much of a loss if they decide to unfollow you because they don't like a photo? That's my theory at the moment. Is, I think, obviously, engagement, this is something we've discussed many times. Engagement is almost the entire basis for creativity these days. It's almost like we don't share work or we don't share photos unless we think somebody is going to like it, and we actually make that decision not to share it because we believe people aren't going to engage with you, or they're not going to unfollow you. And I almost think that it's become a really fake way of living, that if you need to base decisions around your creativity, around what you think other people might do negatively towards you, it's wrong. This is something that we as photographers need to stop doing, because it's hampering our creative process. And I think it's really restricting photography as a whole. Within the Australian landscape photography community, there's almost a very distinctive style of photography that's appeared. Long exposure, auto effect style stuff, all of this. And for its time, when this kind of became a style that many people started doing on Instagram, it was innovative. It was people kind of figuring out how to use Photoshop and doing that. But what's the next step in innovation? Who as a photographer now out there is going to make that next step and do something that's so different? What's holding us back? And it's almost the belief that people are going to unfollow us because we share something that they may not like. But the thing is, a follower is not a real follower unless they're engaging with you as a person. It's not just your imagery, it's you. You need to, as somebody who's using social media, get people to relate to you. You need to get people to become part of your life, to become part of your story. And if they haven't done that, why worry about if they unfollow you anyway? They're not the people that you want following you. It's almost like that statistic of having a big number of followers means more than the creative process of photography. And I think that is a really bad way that the photography industry is going.
We also had a question on our Facebook page, now messages from Denny Quintal, about how there seems to be a trend, or people just sort of post photos that do well, and then other people post photos based on those ones, and there's sort of an echo chamber feedback happening around Instagram, and it does dampen creativity as well. And I think, as you're saying, with people engaging with you as a person, I mean, you're a great example of having not as many followers as some of the bigger accounts out there, the hundreds of thousands. of followers, but you get much more personal engagement because you've got a strong follower base that wants to follow you for not just your images, but your story and creativity behind them as well.
Yeah, I think it's really. I think people are missing the whole point of having a follower base, and the business of social media has caused this to happen. So, what's the point in having 470,000 followers when you get only 5,000 likes on an image? For me, that means that you're not connecting with your audience in some way, shape, or form. I almost think that creative process and the repetition that's come from photography and come from seeing other images in the Instagram community or in the photography community is having a negative impact on that, and almost making people feel as if the entire metric they need to be looking at is their number of followers. And it's not a healthy way to live, and it's not positive for the photography community to not be pushing the boundaries of creativity all the time. What's the point in picking up your camera every single time you go out and doing the exact same thing, just maybe in a different place? Photography should be a creative art that should be fun and should be challenging. And I think this belief that people will unfollow you because you share something outside of something that you normally do is not a great way to live. And it's just something I think it'll probably only get worse before it gets better. I think it's going to take some bigger name photographers out there to really kind of address this and maybe lead the way in doing this. But it's just not a healthy way to live. And I don't think it's a positive thing for the photography community either to not be pushing those creative boundaries. I've set myself a big goal this year of multiple things that I've made public, obviously, getting back into macro photography, but I really want to learn about studio lighting. I'd like to learn to shoot really great portraits. These portraits that we're just talking about in the Photographer of the Year stuff, I would love to be able to produce imagery like this. This is, it's compelling. It's great. It's a great art. So for me, like, those sort of things are my own personal challenges, and I would love to hear what other people think of my opinion of this, because that comment that I received on that post kind of hit the nail on the head for me, that really that is actually true. It's like we're so worried about whether people engage with our photo and whether they're going to unfollow this if they don't like our photo. If they unfollow you because they don't like your photo, it's because they haven't connected with you as a person. That's a bigger issue, I think. And I think that as a photographer and as a social media user is probably your aim more than keeping people, every single person, happy every single time you post a photo. And I also have said this in the past. I think many photographers in Australia are now trying to impress other photographers rather than the key audience where they could potentially be making money from as well, if that's their aim. So
I think it's a bit of a catch-22 as well when you are starting out in social media, that you can't really be out there and different right away if you are trying to build up that follower base. And sometimes you need to stick to what works just to get a bit of attention at the start before you start pushing the boundaries. You need to, I guess, find a nice balance between what you're actually shooting for. And I know I've taken, maybe a few months of realizing that I was just posting for Instagram before I realized I need to get away from just going out and trying to shoot what everyone else is shooting, going to events around Melbourne just so I can potentially get shared on different accounts about relating to what's going on, and just go out and shoot my particular field, which is landscape photography, find photos that I like and I would love to have up on my wall rather than ones that would look good on Instagram. But at the same time, I do know that if I want to build a following in that Instagram market, which is really just valuable for photographers, you do need to work out which photos will work on Instagram and which ones won't. But as long as you're not shooting just for that one particular social media, then you can find a nice balance. But it's just learning the difference between the two and engaging with people, not just posting just to get likes and just to get comments and followers, but going around to other accounts, finding images you like, finding creativity that you like, following them, engaging with those people. And that will help, I guess, build your own engagement to your own feed, because people see that you're wanting to view some of that creativity and be a part of it as well.
Yeah, I think maybe we won't get into this one too much, but Instagram should only be a very small part of your entire photography life. If it's your entire life, you maybe need to start thinking about other things. And I think if the creative process of photography and your experimentation and all those types of things is being limited by your constant need and desire to think you need to impress your follower base, and you think you're going to lose out if you don't, I think you may be doing the wrong thing. And that's just my personal opinion. I think, and I don't. It's not aimed at any individual in particular. I think this is just a broader conversation within the photography community as a whole that maybe needs to happen. Is what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to the industry when day after day after day after day we are producing the same type of stuff that is just no longer innovative or creative? It's just repetitive.
But at the same time, I mean, you've built up a follower base around what you have posted. And if you make a drastic change to that, so on the Tazzygrammer post, if you just start going to you building up your creativity in, say, portrait or macro, I mean, I'm sure you're not going to have all your people just unfollow you. You still will get those people who have followed you as a person to stay. But is that such a good thing for that particular marketing platform for your photography?
Yeah,
or would you
possibly
start a Tazzygrammer portraits account where you are showing that particular field of your photography, which can also build up, and you can direct people to it if they want to see that kind of thing?
For sure.
I mean, you don't always have to have the one particular account to show everything that you're doing. You can switch accounts, have different ones for different people to follow based on what their particular likes are, because you can't expect people to like everything you're doing, because no one likes absolutely everything.
Yeah, definitely. So here's my question though: is what sort of opportunities are there to reach a whole new audience by creating great content around a slightly different genre? Because not everybody in the world likes long exposure photography. Not everybody likes seeing images that are produced that are done in a way that the human eye doesn't recognize them when they see that scene. You know, like, yes, you might be able to pick out landmarks, but a 5-minute long exposure is certainly not the way the average traveler sees a scene when they visit there. So my thought of, and this again coming from my marketing background, is people like photography for different reasons. And perfect example again, us going to the Stephen DuPont show. There's a huge market for that type of imagery. What is it? Why we're so scared to do something new for fear of losing something? But why not think positively to gain an entire new and broader reach of audience through a broader type of content? I'm not talking about just sharing any image. I'm not talking about just taking snapshots and sharing. The creative process of creating great images, whether it be macro, whether it be portraiture, whether it be long exposure landscapes, whether it be travel photography with overblown skies, whatever it is, that creative process reaches a whole new demographic of people that could potentially relate to that. What I think you need to do is, through that process, is get people to relate to that process and why you're doing it. Why are you trying to achieve this? What is the story behind doing something new? What is it that you've done through the creation or the process of that creativity? Why have you made that decision? Those are things that I think help people relate to that entire process. So I think the fear of losing something is holding many people back from experimenting and being creative.
What you're saying makes sense if you are doing it for your own creativity and your own life and photography, but in relation particularly just to Instagram, where you're sharing those photos, I mean, for you personally, do you really think that if you suddenly switch from your long exposure landscapes to pictures of, or macro pictures of flowers or insects, that you will get the same engagement from everyone? Like, I'm no doubt you'd still have many people following you, commenting, giving you positive feedback. But I think that with just Instagram and not like your photography in general, with just Instagram, there would be a drop off in your ability to market your photography on that particular account.
Yeah, see, again, I think the topics that we've discussed previously, again, is all about engagement. And I think point proven just there, the thing that you've just brought up is engagement. It's engagement, it's engagement, it's engagement. I think there's opportunities there to create entirely new sets of engagement with different people. Again, whether I would necessarily go and do this myself, I've got some shots that are relatively different to things that I've done there in the past. So, pretty much everything I've done is tripod mounted landscapes in the past. I've kind of done some abstract shots of trees poking up in the sky. I've done all sorts of, I've taken the steps outside of my standard style of photography and still been able to generate conversation and engagement around that process. And whether I would necessarily go and post macros of flowers, I'm not talking about that. I mean, you've still got to be creative, and the imagery that you share has still got to be worthy of getting comments and engagement. But I think that the potential's there for people to really, who don't specialize in any individual style of photography, to reach whole new sets of audiences if they're stepping outside of the expectation. And that's just a conversation, I think, within the entire photography community. It's not just my account, it's not just your account. I just wonder what sort of negative impact that belief is having on photographers and their creative process. That's all.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it'd build a new market, or a new base of followers that you could potentially get from being more creative in a different field. But would that damage the marketing potential that you've already built up? And I think you can be creative without damaging the marketing potential of Instagram, which you've already developed.
Yeah, again, too, the other side of this is too, many of the guys that I've spoken to recently, and particularly here in Tassie, don't make money from this in the first place. So in terms of marketing potential, my question there is, how much success are you actually having by tying yourself to a single niche market? What financial gain are you actually having? Are you actually really making money from the single style of photography, or is it just this belief that the people are going to unfollow you because you step outside of your expectation of what you think they feel? I think anybody taking quality images in the first place can get people to relate to that process. And it's just a theory of mine. And again, I'm going to continue to experiment. The images that I share have to be worthwhile sharing. It's not, I'm not going to go just doing it just because I want to go down that path. You've still got to be creative enough to do that and to draw people into the storytelling behind that image as well. As you say, what sort of marketing potential are you losing? First and foremost, most of the guys don't make money anyway. So that's just my theory behind this is there's not that much of a market for long exposure landscapes and very distinct that style. There's so much competition within that niche market anyway. There's only a very few people out there that actually make money from Instagram related stuff. So I just wonder whether it's actually holding them back in doing that as well, showing their actual skills as a photographer, not just their skills as an Instagrammer. They're two different things.
I think if we could just put a numerical value on this, if you're spending any more than 10% of your photography time or effort on Instagram, then it's probably too much. I mean, that 10% may be the 10% that people actually see of your work, but there should be so much more groundwork holding that up. So the tip of the iceberg that you actually see, there should be so much more under there that is going towards developing your photography and not spending so much time on that one thing that should be such a small part.
Absolutely. If your aim is to make a business out of photography and your entire photography basis is the audience on Instagram, it is time to log out, spend half that time on Instagram and go and put that effort into driving other areas of your photography. And I think if you're not making money off the style of photography you are regularly sharing anyway, and your aim is to make money from photography, you're either not sharing a style of photography or that people really want to pay for, or you're in a competitive niche market where there's people who are dominating that market already and are very, very good at it, or you're just not addressing the market as a photographer and really thinking about how to make money from your camera, if that is your aim. And again, not everybody does it, but this is I think another thing within Instagram. Everybody wants to be a professional Instagrammer. Everybody wants to use Instagram to drive exposure for themselves and all those type of things. I think maybe this restriction that people put in their own head around the type of images they share on their Instagram account may also be leading to that as well. And again, you know, we've probably spoken about this now for nearly 20 minutes. We could probably talk about this for another few hours, and I'm sure this would be a debate that would rage on within the photography community for a very long time about whether our creative process is being hampered by our belief of what people think people will engage with on Instagram.
Yeah, I was agreeing with you there on that point that we could talk about it for quite some time, and it's probably a good idea to move on to other things, and maybe we can bring up the conversation in other episodes, or even with just online as well, and Facebook if people want to share their views.
Yeah.
But one thing we did touch on in our broadcast, our live broadcast, based on the calculations for long exposures, was I think we had one there where you could have an exposure of over or around about 200 days. And we were wondering whether anyone has actually gone out to try and get an exposure this long. And we've done a bit of research and found that, yes, there has been some extraordinarily long exposures, one that's going to be going for the next 1,000 years, but we'll come back to that one. But there's a guy that's gone and taken some exposures that are 3 years long.
Yep, 34 months, this particular 34 one.
Months.
Yeah, the deconstruction of the MoMA building in New York, or the Museum of Modern Art, from 2001 to 2004. So yeah, it's pretty impressive to see this. And, you know, you got to think, when I look at this image, I'm almost looking... It's weird because you see the whole building, but you can also see the framework of the building inside. It almost looks like an X-ray type thing, you know?
Yeah, and the photographer's Michael Weasley as well, whose work we're looking at. And one of the things that really stands out to me about these is the path of the sun through these shots. So we're looking at a cityscape, as Tessie Grammer said, of the MoMA being deconstructed and reconstructed. And you can see in the background in the sky just these long, bright lines where the sun has gone through each day and just burnt a path. And that changes as the seasons go by. And that's a strong element in all his shots from different cityscapes. So he set up 4 cameras to take these shots of the building being brought down and then rebuilt. And he's also got another one from Berlin as well, which almost the entire sky is just filled up with the path of the sun, and you've got a building with parkland there as well. And they're just really odd to see so much time pass in a single image, as you're saying, with the ghost-like effect of some elements in it where things have been there for maybe a few days or months and then they've disappeared. So they're starting to be taken over by other elements that are new things that have been rebuilt.
No, they're very artistic. I quite like these. We, you know, obviously was one of the things that we actually asked ourselves is can we find some examples of extreme long exposure photography? And these are some great examples. So we'll put some links up there. And I think Matt Donovan said he was going to do a 200-day long exposure for us. So it'd be cool if he did. I know he's joking, but it'd be cool if he did.
And keep in mind as well, these are not from digital cameras. These are custom-made pinhole cameras using film photography or something like that.
Yeah.
But definitely not digital, electronic based and sensor based.
No, definitely not. Yeah. So the 1,000-year one is actually some sort of modified camera that uses oil to do it. So obviously you can't plug a battery in for 34 months. I reckon you'd end up with an issue there somewhere. You'd be pretty annoyed if you got to like 30 months and it was underexposed and the battery
got to start again.
You'd be pretty frustrated by that. So that's we'll put some links up to that. Another kind of newsworthy topic that's happened this week. A group of photographers who were in Yosemite, I believe it is, Yellowstone National Park in the Prismatic Springs, who were filmed walking over some hot springs have two of the four that were filmed doing this have been sent to jail for 7 days for doing so. There's actually a combination of reasons they've done this, but this is a pretty firm statement from the US government, the prosecutors, and the national parks in the US to say that you cannot be doing this sort of activity, and it is. I'm sure it's pretty harsh, but I think 7 days is also probably not as bad as what they could have had if the prosecutors genuinely sought some sort of maximum time here. So
I think one of the bigger things there as well is banned from US public lands for 5 years.
Yep.
I mean, can you imagine in Tasmania being banned from the national parks for 5 years?
Oh, you would have to
hardly be able to go anywhere.
You'd have to leave Tasmania. 48% of the state is national park, so you pretty much wouldn't be able to go for a drive anywhere without passing through a national park, I think. So
yeah, I think for these people who would love to get out in nature, and it looks like it's something that they do, they go out, film or do whatever in beautiful natural landscapes, is they're not allowed to do that anymore. And that's probably the biggest punishment from that. I mean, a week in jail, it's bad, but I mean, that's only a week. A couple of $1,000 fine, you can pay that pretty easily, but 5 years, can't go into any of those places. That would be bad for me.
Look, I'm sure these guys they didn't go out of their way to cause any damage either. I'm pretty sure as filmmakers and photographers, they were just trying to create some cool content without really thinking about what they were necessarily doing or who was filming them doing what they were doing. So I'm sure they didn't deliberately go out of their way to damage the landscape or to cause any harm there. But it is a pretty firm statement being made here that this is not allowed, and that I think the greater issue and of accessing sensitive areas for the purpose of photography is probably something that is on a tightrope and a small time frame now. I think this may happen in many other places, and I'm fairly certain. I know the Tasmanian photography community quite well, and I know that there is a push by some people to make this sort of thing happen in Tasmania, even just simple things like people who could potentially sell prints needing to get actual legal permits or CVS applications in place with national parks. So there's all sorts of things and drives behind within the politics of this sort of stuff. So it's a pretty firm statement, I think, that's been made here that this isn't allowed, and maybe probably making an example of them as well to show that everybody needs to be careful with what they're doing. So
just want to ask you a question about your Canon cameras. Either of the bodies that you've got, or however many you've got, how many frames per second can those cameras shoot?
Ooh, I think my Mark III about 6, and my 5DS 5, I believe.
So nowhere near 1 billion frames per second. 100 billion, frames per second.
No,
No, you don't think you could get it to go that fast?
I don't think so. I'll have to check the tech specs, but I'm pretty sure no.
No. Well, got an article here of some scientists that have got a camera that will film at 100 billion frames per second, which is just mind-boggling in the first place to even divide a second up that much. And they've filmed the passage of light to try and capture a light's sonic boom, so to speak. It's not something that really makes sense to just really think about, but I mean, you can see it in relation to an airplane going faster than the speed of sound and breaking the sound barrier. It creates a sonic boom, and you can actually see that as a physical thing as well. There's an image there of a jet fighter going faster than Mark 1. And this camera has, in a very extraordinary and well thought out way, captured light going through dry ice and spreading out into some other plates or barriers just to... Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's worth checking out the article. And
it's interesting just to think of light as an actual physical force. This is probably a great example of this, that light is not just something that appears. It is actually something that moves through the air, through the atmosphere, through whatever. Like so you actually see the physical impact of what light is doing here. Obviously, it's not causing damage, but it's really just interesting to see light as a moving object. It is actually an object that's forcing through the ice in this particular example. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see this one. So,
but I do wonder how, and as the scientist said as well, they're more excited by having the camera that films at 100 billion frames per second, and what that kind of technology what effect that will have on future cameras and camera technology to follow.
Yeah, I'd like for my camera to flick that fast. Maybe mirrorless cameras will do it. Who knows?
It's filming. It doesn't have to have a shutter that opens and closes that fast. But the film side of it is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I really like the little jet plane as well, or the American fighter jet here. That's clearly showing the sonic boom happening and the force that comes off the back end of it. That's pretty awesome to see. Nice shot. I would have loved to have taken that.
Challenge yourself to head out and take a photo of a jet breaking the sound barrier.
Yes. Well, mate, I've spent enough time with you over the past week. I thought you left me yesterday and I was done with you for a while, but no, you wanted to talk this morning. So, so look, I've got other things that I need to do now. So massive thank you to George's Cameras for supporting us with our Instagram competition. So keep the posts rolling in on the hashtag Project RAWcast and mentioning us at Project RAWcast for a chance to win a $50 gift voucher. And also massive thank you to Nisi for their ongoing support of Project RAWcast, and using the coupon code Project RAWcast at checkout process on nisifilters.com.au will get you a 5% discount on any purchase. So,
all right, well, now let's go our separate ways for a change and go live our own lives. Great.
Well, it's Australia Day stuff. I'm heading off to Cradle Mountain, so I'm hoping I've got no mobile phone signal, so you cannot get hold of me. I just leave me alone for a while, please.
Well, I'll be busy with my Great Ocean Road workshop, so I won't have time to get in touch with you anyway.
Awesome. Great. All right. So yeah, good luck with that. Hopefully that's all successful. And yes, I'm going to go and take some pretty photos of a pretty mountain. So
excellent. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.
Sweet. See you, mate. Cheers.
Bye.